So that's 11 a.m. UK time. Let's get started. So hello and welcome to this morning's webinar on Karger's Read, Publish and Outreach offer to Jisc members in the United Kingdom. My name is Alison Hope. I am Karger's dedicated point of contact for institutions in the United Kingdom. And as you'll be aware, Karger announced its Read, Publish and Outreach offer to Jisc members at the end of last year. This is a very new model. I think we can safely say that it's an industry first. And I am aware from conversations that I have, many of you out there still have lots of questions about how it works. So I've invited my colleagues, Emma Filloy and Chris Box, to talk you through how it works and to answer some of the questions that we've been receiving. Please be aware that this session will be recorded and you will receive the recording shortly afterwards. I'll also make sure that you have my contact details in case you have any questions. Would also like to encourage you to share your questions using the chat function. Just familiarise yourself with that. It's in the top right-hand side of the screen. Please be assured that all questions will be addressed anonymously. Now, we're aiming to keep things short and to the point today, so it's a 30-minute session. We're going to try and get through as much as we can in that time, as I'm always mindful that within academia, a lot of people are typically very busy. So if we don't answer your questions today, I would encourage you to get in contact with me directly. Finally, many thanks to everyone who submitted their questions in advance. We're going to be addressing them in a moment, but first let me introduce you to Chris Box, Karger's Head of Academic and Research Markets, and Emma Filloy, the Outreach Product Manager at Karger. So, Chris, the Read, Publish and Outreach offer, can you give us an overview and show us how it works, please?
Sure. Thanks, Alison, and welcome everyone from me. Yeah, excited to talk about this. I think, as Alison said, I'm pretty sure it's an industry first. Perhaps the librarians on the call might be able to correct us on that, but it's certainly a first for Karger, and it's actually something that's been exciting. We've had lots of other conversations with other consortia and institutions around the world that seem to be showing a similar interest as well. We appreciate it's quite new, so we wanted to talk through exactly how it works, and we're going to spend most of the time today talking about the outreach component because I think that is the newest part. But I did just want to start by introducing the Read and Publish component because I'm conscious that Read and Publish agreements vary between publishers, and I think it's worth just introducing how that works before we get started. The Karger model with Jisc is actually really simple. It's pretty much the same as we've had in place for the last 5 or 6 years already. It offers to members unlimited access to all of the Karger journals, including the back file, so that gives access from 1998 to date, and it offers unlimited open access publishing in any Karger journal, so be that fully open access or hybrid, by corresponding authors at the institution, and all articles are published on a CC BY basis. I think that's generally the critical criteria that people are most interested in, but as Alison said, we've got plenty of time for questions at the end if you did have other points you wanted to clarify. Just a few additional points. So we have on-demand reporting and approvals via Chronos Hub, so that effectively is our librarian portal, if you like, and there you can collect any on-demand reports that you want to know on the publication activity at your institution, be it submissions or articles that were published under the agreement. And we can also activate approvals for there if you need them. We don't insist on approvals, but I know for many of you they are essential, so the option is there should you want us to activate those for you. The pricing is based on Jisc banded tiers, and it's a 3-year agreement, 24 to 26, with an annual opt-out, which I think most Jisc agreements have in place as well. So that's a really quick overview of the Read and Publish agreement. We're really happy to answer other questions on that. But I'm going to move on now to introduce the outreach component, because as I say, I think that's the newer element for most people. So, and I think we need to start in the first instance by saying, what do we mean by outreach as well? I think outreach means different things to different people, and I know particularly in the librarian community, scholarly outreach is a real focus. The focus of this is very much about public outreach. It's about how we can take research that's published in journals and make it available in the hands of the general public. And one of the main reasons for this is if we go back to the original aims of open access, I think you can say they were twofold. Firstly, it was about providing universal access throughout the research community, but it was also about providing universal access beyond the research community. And on that second point, I kind of think about it in two different ways. Firstly, it was about putting that research in the hands of practitioners and companies who can utilize the research to improve the everyday lives of the general public. But secondly, it's actually about putting that information in the hands of the general public. And, we really want to try and improve the public understanding of trusted science and improve the public trust in science in general. And it's really that second component that the outreach element is focused on. But I think one thing that we can say in terms of the open access and the progress that's been made in the open access movement is that actually on that top half, we're probably making quite good progress in that we've now got to, let's say, the industry being about 50% open access. And that's been through, lots of different things, the growth of read and publish agreements, fully open access publishing, and many different avenues that people will know about. But I think it's probably fair to say that on the second point about providing universal access beyond the research community, not as much progress has been made. And, I think one of the main reasons for that is it's quite a tough nut to crack. And that's because I think the general public probably face two barriers, or an additional barrier that the research community face. It's pretty obvious from what I've put up here. So this is an article that we published in one of our journals. And what we can all immediately see is that, the language for the non-specialist community is completely inaccessible. And I think we can be honest in saying journal formats aren't necessarily the most engaging format. And so it means that for the non-expert community, they effectively have potentially two barriers. Firstly, the access barrier, that the content could be behind a paywall. But secondly, the accessibility barrier, and that is that the content is not written in a format or language that's accessible or engaging to the non-expert community. So even if we make this article open access, it was actually published open access, that helps to break down that first barrier of the paywall, but the second barrier of accessibility still exists. And I think that's the one that we're really trying to address with this outreach component. And so again, coming back to those original aims, I think you can kind of say that we would see the read and publish component very much supports the research community and perhaps a little bit beyond that. But the read, publish and outreach goes a step further and provides an additional means to try and support outreach, which is a big topic and requires lots of different approaches to try and solve it. So that's in essence what it is that we're talking about as the overall agreement. I'm going to describe how it works in practice as a model, but just before I do that, I'm going to ask my colleague Emma, who's going to give you some more practical examples of exactly what we mean by outreach. So how does that play out in practice? And just before I do hand over to her, just to give you the additional context, is that even though the new read, publish and outreach agreement with Jisc is new, actually the team have been providing outreach services for many years. The main model that they work on at the moment is individual outreach projects with individual researchers. And that's actually within any area of research. It's not just for articles published in Karger journals, it's any research that's been published in any subject area. And just to give you the context, in the UK alone, we've created about 450 outreach projects from over 70 universities in the last 5 years. So there's already a huge amount of activity going on in that front. And I thought it would be really useful for Emma to give you some of those examples. And then once she's been through those, I'll explain exactly how we've created this new centrally funded model, which covers multiple projects within that. And that's really what makes up the read, publish and outreach agreement. But I'll hand over to Emma now, who is going to talk you through some of the individual projects. And I need to do this, so I think I can do that. And I think, Emma, I've given you control.
Let's have a look. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Chris. So yeah, thanks very much. My name's Emma. I'm the outreach product manager at Karger, and I've been working on, as Chris said, this kind of individual outreach service with individual researchers for about 8 years now. And when we're sort of looking at what does an outreach service do, we think about it in two parts, so translation and dissemination. And when we're talking about translation, kind of as Chris explained earlier, we're talking about taking that really complex research that's maybe, you know, I think Alison said the other day, I'm not unintelligent, but it can be very difficult to understand. And I feel exactly the same way about a lot of those very complex peer-reviewed papers. So we're taking that complex research and we're distilling it down into simple language. And we're also using engaging formats. So that might mean a podcast, might mean an animation, an article, but everything that's essentially intended for that general public audience. And then once we've got this lovely piece of content, we don't just want to kind of pop it on a website and leave it there. We want to actually make sure that it's seen by the people that it's intended for. So that takes us onto the dissemination part. And we have several platforms that are aimed at non-specialists. So that might be a YouTube channel, it could be a podcast channel, or a couple of publications that we create. And all of our content is published on one of these specialized platforms aimed at the general public. And then we also use social media to get that piece of content out in front of the intended audience. I think social media is a really effective tool for reaching that very broad group of people that are not specialists. You know, nobody expects to find something on Facebook that's going to be really difficult for them to engage with. It's full of videos, things that we're used to, and people use it in their everyday lives. And just a little bit more detail on the translation and dissemination. The mouse is not working for me anymore, Chris. I don't know if it's working for you. Sorry.
Try again now.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So when we're talking about translation, we're really talking about a few different types of formats that we use. So that might be 2D animation, it might be a podcast or an article, as I've mentioned before. It could be a kind of 60-second video abstract, an infographic, or a website as well that maybe contains lots of different types of content. And as I explained, for dissemination, we use a lot of social media, and we tend to run promotional campaigns so that we can reach a really broad range of people. And at the end of those promotional campaigns, we produce a report, which we call an impact report, that shows the number of people that the piece of content, that saw the piece of content, how they engaged with it, and gives some kind of demographic information about those people. So where in the world were they based? What age were they? And we find that the researchers that we work with really value these reports. In terms of kind of, I thought it would be really helpful to talk through a few examples so you can see exactly what working with us might look like. So the first example is when we worked with, I've lost control, Chris. No, okay, yeah, we worked with the UK Frost frozen shoulder trial. So this is a clinical trial that compared treatment options for frozen shoulder. And their results showed that a surgical non-invasive option was the most cost-effective treatment, and it was just as effective as keyhole surgery. And they really wanted to reach patients, clinicians, and allied health professionals with this information to help them in their decision-making. A publication of a paper demonstrating these results was underway in the Lancet, but we actually were in contact with the team during that publication process, and we were able to coincide publication of our material at the same time as their paper was published, which can be really beneficial for increasing traffic to a paper, and so obviously increasing reads. So we decided to create a 2D animation for this team. We chose that format because it was a really visual way to explain the differences between the different types of treatment. It's also a really engaging format, and you can get quite a lot of information across in a very short period of time. We ran a promotional campaign on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and we got some really great organic reach as a result of that. So you might not be able to see clearly on the screen, but the video was picked up and reposted by the National Institute of Health Research. And on the right of the screen, there's also a post from somebody who was in fact a physiotherapist, so one of those allied health professionals that the team were hoping to reach. And they commented, I've already used this with a patient today. They found it really helpful they found it really easy to understand and helpful. So that's kind of showing that we'd managed to do exactly what the team were hoping. We also produced the impact report, as I described earlier, and just a couple of, sort of top figures from that. So the video received over 66,000 impressions on social media, and that's in a 4-week time frame. And as of today, it's got 9,505 views on YouTube, and that number will slowly keep climbing, even though this video was published a few years ago. So that's one example. Another example is when we worked with a team who wanted to raise awareness of sinus migraines. These headaches are often misdiagnosed, which can result in the overuse of antibiotics. And there are not many images available that show the sinus nerve anatomy, which the team we worked with found was really hampering their ability to provide good patient education. So we created an outreach article with a bespoke illustration showing that anatomy. And we also ran a social media promotion. And this article, this promotion had a really amazing number of engagements, over 11,000 engagements and 70,000 impressions. Another example is a podcast that we produced to support a team from Uppsala University. They were conducting a study called the Mom to Be study, which investigated whether data gathered from an app could be used to identify women who are at risk of postpartum depression earlier than current techniques. So they wanted to raise awareness of that app as a wellbeing tool to use during pregnancy and after childbirth, but also to enable them to increase the amount of data for their study. So we worked with them to produce a podcast. We tailored the script so that it included a lot of very key phrases for search engine optimization. And the social media team developed a campaign structure, which meant that we could target a very specific audience. So it was women within a specific age range who'd interacted with lifestyle, parenting, and pregnancy pages during a specific time frame. So those are a few examples of projects that we've done with research teams in the past. And then I kind of wanted to talk through the process of how we would work with a researcher as well. So the first thing to note is that we do offer a complete end-to-end service. So we kind of, our team takes on the responsibility of getting all the work done. And at the start, a member, like a researcher or a faculty member, will have a conversation with a member of our team, normally an account manager, and they will explain the services to them, they'll understand their needs, and they will propose a plan for us to work together. They'll get the booking confirmed, and the faculty member will sign a contract for the project, and they'll then be put in touch with a project manager. So this person is going to guide them through the process of developing the piece of content. They'll be their single point of contact throughout the process, and help keep everything streamlined. And we work in a very collaborative way with the researchers we work with, and we take them through multiple stages of approval to ensure that they're happy with the final piece of content before we move on to publication and dissemination and production of that impact report. So that's some information from me, and I will hand back to you, Chris.
Thanks, Alison. So Emma, sorry. So I think I can hopefully now take back control. Yes. Okay. Great. So thanks. Yeah. So that gave you an example. So how the individual projects work, and I now just want to bring that back into the framework of how the Jisc Karger model works in practice, specifically the outreach component. But just before I do that, just to make sure that we're really clear on this. So for the Jisc members, we provide two options. There's the read and publish independently, and then there's also the option of the read, publish and outreach. So it's not something that we force either option on you. Whether you go for option 1 or option 2, the read and publish component is exactly the same. So it's exactly the same fee for each component, and all of the benefits are the same. There's unlimited publishing and unlimited reading as part of that. For those customers that opt for the second option, outreach, there's an additional fee for the outreach services, and I'm just going to explain now exactly how that account works. So effectively, it's a really simple credit account based on the customer's preferred budget. So we have a minimum of 20,000 to activate the account and the benefits in the first instance. But after that, it's effectively up to the customer to decide how they want to spend that money on which projects and over which time frame they want to do that. To give you a bit of context around that, so let's imagine a customer has activated their account and there'll be a number of projects that they want to support from that fund over the time following the activation. And there's a number of benefits that you get by taking a centralized approach to this. So first of all, there's the idea that there's some procurement savings. You know, researchers probably have to create these outreach projects themselves anyway. So having a centralized approach takes away some of the issues related to that. We can also make sure that we use a consistent institutional branding across all of those projects. I don't think we're the only company that sometimes struggles to get everyone to use the same version of the logo and that kind of thing. So making sure we get consistency across all of the projects is something that can be helpful for you. And also all of those projects exist in one place. So, you know, where they're all done independently, it might be that they're deposited in different parts of different servers all over the place. Actually having them centralized means that you've got all those in one place and you can decide if you want to disseminate those collectively or individually, whichever you think is the best way forward. Secondly, you'd benefit from an aggregated impact report. So as Emma was describing, at the end of any individual project, we provide an impact report that shows the impact of the dissemination. So we'd continue to provide these under the centralized approach, but as an additional benefit, the account administrator would get every year a report showing the total aggregated impact across all of the different projects which it was funded. So you've got the outputs themselves in terms of the animations and the articles, and an aggregated view of how the dissemination was for all of those projects collectively. And thirdly, there's a 10% discount on all services. So all of the researchers that do a project under the central account would pay 10% less, or 10% less would come from the account as a result. And you have a dedicated account manager. So that means that there's all of the contact you can have on a day-to-day basis. And the account manager helps you to understand how much credit you might have and the projects which are currently in progress, so you can feel in control of the account. And just a reminder, so the outreach component can be used for any research or institution in any field. It's not just that's published in Karger journals, as the examples which Emma gave, those weren't examples that were published in Karger journals. You can, of course, do that if you want to, but you're free to use it in any way that you'd like to. And just to make sure we're clear as well, the copyright for all of the outputs are owned by the researcher or the institution. We use our platforms to support dissemination, but the materials themselves are owned by the researcher or the institution. We'd encourage, obviously, OA publication under a CC license, and my expectation is that you'll probably be looking to do that anyway, but we don't insist on that being the case. So that's generally the benefits from the centralized approach. And as I really touched on there's a really simple three-way communication group to make sure that everyone's aware of the progress of the account. So, you know, we ask that you appoint a key contact at the institute, and they can be in regular contact with our account manager. The account manager can provide quarterly reports to make sure you know where you are with the fund and the projects which you're working on. They can provide the impact reports and also just general day-to-day support. You know, for example, if you want to have approvals on before you commit to any projects. There's obviously engagement already between the key contact and faculty members, and depending on how you want to approach that, you know, you can use it to promote services and enable uptake, and equally between the account manager and faculty members, so that we can explain the services, and the project managers can also help with project consultancies to make sure that they achieve their outreach goals. So I think that's most of the process now. I just wanted to very quickly finish with something which I don't think I really need to say. I think everyone's going to be familiar with this, but you know, just reminding why public outreach is so important. I mean, I think the first point we all understand, you know, public understanding and appreciation. Translating scientific findings into everyday language can really increase widespread understanding and foster the appreciation of science's role in solving real world challenges. I know within the academic world, that's a really essential part. I think the other points are just worth reminding as well. So ensuring compliance with funder mandates. So increasingly funders require a public outreach commitment as part of providing a research grant. UKRI, for example, require the adoption of the principles in the 2010 Concord Act for engaging the public with research. And it's a nice thing to do, but I think also researchers are actually committed to doing that as part of their grant, and providing support for them to know how to achieve that, I think, is quite important. And thirdly, it's this whole point about combating fake science. We all know that fake science is posted on the internet every day, and I think as kind of custodians of trusted research, we have a somewhat of an obligation in the whole community to ensure that the trusted science that we have reaches the general public through the channels where they consume content. So that was just really where I wanted to finish. I've put a couple of key facts up about the product. We may have lots of other questions, but just as a reminder, these are some of the things in case there are questions in your mind at the moment. There's an option between read and publish or read, publish and outreach. It's a complete choice to you. It can be used for any research, not that just published in Karger journals or in the health sciences. Does the outreach credit expire? It doesn't expire annually. No, you can use it beyond the year. We do have a kind of 3-year expiry, but that's really just because you have to have something in a contract that says at some point the credit will end. But it certainly doesn't expire on an annual basis. You can top up your account throughout the time. So once it's established, you can top it up and decide to continue to enjoy the benefits for your researchers. And as just touched on there, the copyright for all outputs is owned by the researcher or their institution. So I will stop there, and Alison, I think we can go to any questions.
Thank you. Thank you first of all to Emma and to Chris. You've really covered a lot of the questions. So I'm just kind of going through the questions that we'd received in advance, and I think pretty much the majority of those have been covered. However, I've got 1 or 2 questions. So a question that we received in advance, if we don't decide to take the outreach element by the start of the year, at the same time that we renew our Jisc read and publish agreement, can we join at any time, say, for example, at the end of the financial year, if there is budget left? Chris, I think you've pretty much covered that, but if you could maybe explain a little more on that, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, the answer to that is yes, you can really join it anytime you like. If you wanted to add that on, that's okay. I think we can also say this as well, that actually there's the read and publish option, there's the read, publish and outreach option. Of course, because the outreach option covers much broader than the health sciences, there might be some people that are just interested in that aspect. And we're also really happy to talk about that. I mean, it's something we can be really flexible on. So yeah, any time in the year is fine, and there is no expiry time. So that gives you confidence that you'll get the benefit from any credit wish you set up.
That's great. Another quick question. Karger is considered a medical publisher. Does the research have to be in the field of medicine?
No, it doesn't. The team that have been working on the outreach products that we have are not have been working on projects across the range of topics, and we are happy to accept projects across a really broad spectrum.
I'm conscious we even say the word science a lot, and I mean actually it's goes beyond science, it's humanities and really any aspects within academia or research, let's say.
Okay, keeping an eye on the time, I've got time. Maybe one more quick question for it that was pre-sent, and I've got one more question that's come in from the chat. Would it not be easier for researchers to just connect, oh, sorry, apologies. Would it not just be easier for researchers to contact Karger directly instead of having the centrally managed model? Emma, Chris, I don't know which of you would like to respond to that.
I mean, I think that happens anyway. I mean, it's not an either or here. I mean, the outreach team already work on lots of those projects with individual researchers. There are a number of benefits, I think, that come with the centralized option, but that isn't kind of mandated in any way, shape or form. In fact, Emma and her team work with, I don't know, many researchers on a daily basis. And so I think it's very much an either or. This is just an option for those which were looking to take a slightly different approach.
Excellent. And one final question that we're going to take, it's coming from the chat. We're in Scotland and we have a schedule agreement. Very interesting to hear about Jisc. Can we do something similar for our institution in Scotland?
Absolutely, no reason why not. Yeah, I mean, I think if I remember rightly, you're all Jisc members anyway. So I know that we have a schedule agreement in place, but we're really happy to talk about that. And I'm 99% sure that Jisc would have no issue with us extending the offer to the members of schedule as well, because I think you're all Jisc members anyway. So we'd be really happy to talk about that. And also we can make sure we can structure it in a way that obviously honours the fact that you still have the schedule agreement as well. So perhaps it's an individual outreach component, and yeah, happy to talk about that, and that's no problem at all.
Absolutely, and happy Burton's night. So sadly, we're out of time. So again, I'd like to just thank Emma and Chris for their time today, and also for sharing their insights. If you have any questions, or you'd like to see some examples of the type of projects that we can produce, and you know, quite typically there may be some animations or podcasts that we've already produced for researchers at your institution. So I'd be more than happy to share some examples of that. So we would love to hear you. We would like to continue the conversation. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.